14th Annual Conference. Welcome you all. So this is uh, a real chance for Turkish, and I am going to be delivering the opening speech and inauguration speech of this conference. As Murat Bey has already indicated before, so of course, our steel industry is just passing through a very turbulent period, and but this is not a global problem. So, I mean, in the world, the steel industry is about the diminishing their operations, and we are also moving in parallel to the movement happening in the world. And in the past year, for 14.6 growth has been realized, and this year we are having around 30 percent growth we have had. Uh, so, this year, 10.4, I mean, decrease we have already recorded in our. So as you may also know, I mean, these rates are really very, very big and great. And especially in the flat steel, conditions are better. And all, I mean, there are some negative improvements and development as well. But that's why the manufacturing of this steel has just been diminished a bit. So after the year of 2015, six 620,000 tons, and now I believe that it's going to be reaching out to 9,500,000 tons. So it is a locomotive industry, we can say. So our order, of course, we are coming on the 8th. So and I mean, there are back and forths, you see. What I would like to explain you over here, this year we are the most decreased and diminished company among the top 20. So yeah, of course, there are some other companies who have already been diminished and reduced their production, for example. However, I mean, despite the fact that, for example, India and China are the developing countries in the industry, steel industry, and America is also one of the country which also has a great growth rate. So the crude steel, we have got a kind of fluctuation. 2007, it was about 37 and a half ton manufacturers have been realized, and until the end of this year, maybe this rate is going to be changing slightly. So the economical measures to be taken has not been impacted and affected on our activities and operations. In the global steel industry in 2015, as I mentioned before, the improvement that we have I witnessed, the capacity usage rates have also already been affected by this as well. So this is a really very good rates, especially in comparison with the figures that we have in our house. So in 2017, we have 73.2, and then in the previous year, in the year 2019, it just went down to the rate of 65. Is it something normal for us? No, because in 2016, 2018, we have reached up to 70 or 80%. So When we look at the capacity usage percentage in the world, we see the capacity usage percentage is around 80%. So when we look at the consumption, especially in the global steel industry, uh, the especially in the end products is about uh, 10. We have already seen some cases the percentage reach up to 4 point, and 2018 it was 14.9. So what we would like to take your attention to, the percentage in the year 2018, it is the average rate. In the second half of the year, the other downsizing has already been achieved as well. The economists, the downsizing in 2 quarters are generally accepted as the recession. When we have this downsizing in 4 quarters, I don't know how to put them into the context, you see. But we have really very challenging conditions that the steel industry has just undergone. When we look, in the years that we have looked feature at a very positive way, but we've got a special feature. Even in the toughest conditions, for example, when we think that we are about to die, of course, we are just trying to jump up from that point, and the opinion that we have is deriving from the dynamic and energetic structure of our country. So I believe that the vibration and the vigilance of the industry is going to be realized in the upcoming years. In the coming months, I believe that this is going to be reduced around down to 30%. And in Turkey, steel production of the steel has got a really very dramatic incline. Uh, so uh, uh, I believe that it's more than 10% downsizing occurring in the domestic industry. So when we look at the consumption of the steel in Turkey, around it's maybe a little bit over 20%. And within the context of consumption, and when we look at the share of the imported products and the import, we got really very sharp decline that we have never eyewitnessed before. I mean, it's not deriving from giving up the usage of the imported products in Turkey. I mean, in some way, it's positive. I mean, if we are able to increase our consumption, of course, this might also serve to our objectives. When we look at the share of the consumption, we do not see any positive progress. It's about 30% or 40% that we foresee for the future. In the last 1 year, was 44.3, and now it just rise up to 45 point something. And we've got a habit of importing this steel goods. I was in another meeting yesterday, and one of our friends told us that even if the tax imposed, let's say that the prices index has increased over here in Turkey, because the seller and abroad is just checking out what the prices in the domestic market is, and they are proposing a little bit less than what the Turkish manufacturers propose to their clients. Why don't you get into cooperation in order to downsize the prices, just getting into cooperation with the players available in the industry. So in none of the places in the world has got this many importers. So, for example, import tax that they impose is about 12%, because we have already mentioned about the decline in the import, especially. So I also attended a meeting in the global steel industry. So they say that there is a decline at around 4%. So, and they were just questioning how we were going to be surviving when there was this kind of decline. So, so this is a dilemma that we have to sort out. Really, there is a case which is really difficult to explain. And total steel trade volume, there is the improvement and growth in the export sector. So, for example, the very sharp decline in the demand in the domestic market. Of course, the Turkey has just targeted the European countries to export their products. So the case which is in favor of the import in the year 2007, now it just turned out to be in favor of the export. And this trend is just being carried out. I mean, even in this year, and after the month of January, of course, there is some decreases in that sense as well. But after the following the June, I mean, it started to get into the normal position in the market as well. So this is what I would like to tell you at the moment. So when we look at the issue from the income, I mean, in the foreign currency, we can say that the export is a little bit higher, at a higher level than the import level. So when we look at the export, the red ones, it's in type of foreign currency, and the blue one is reflecting and representing the quantity. For example, when you look at this graph, up until 2007, we have just had the deficit, the negative development, and when we look at the year 2018, we've got surplus at a rate of 1,002,900 to 904.658. So, I mean, at the past years of the 2000, of course, we have given some deficits as well. Of course, there's an unbalanced case over here. So, the United States of America impose us the percentage of 25, and of course there is an impact on this, and there is a shrinking in the global market as well, and there is some damping measures to have been taken by the countries as well. So for this reason, there is a kind of accumulation in this market. So let's talk about, when I say that, let's talk about that. They say that forget about talking about the past, but let's talk about the future. So, I mean, they do not have an intention, I mean, if the case in favor of them, but if it is controversial, then they talk about those issues, I mean. And so the trade that we have got in all the countries, of course, we have to talk about and discuss more balanced structure as well. And we have to get into a structure, the export structure, which is going to be in favor of our companies available in Turkey. And we have just went up to the level of 2.5 thousand tons, and then we went down to 275,000 tons. Uh, I mean, we can say that our export to the United States of America has already been halted. Uh, so, uh, the president of the United States of America, Trump, says that we have to take position in the frame of the World Trade Organization. And, for example, he sometimes says that he has already instructed them to impose a tax at the rate of 25%, but later. I mean, even it's the case if it is in favor of our country. So that is. They say that we have just increased up to 50%, and then we just put it down to 25%. And now we are just concentrating on how we are going to be remove this 25% as well. When we discuss about all these things, they said that the way that Turkish economy is going is not the way that we desire it to be. And of course, in a country like USA, in OECD meetings, they were all the time talking about fair trade, but Europeans are also saying this as well. But I mean, in the recent years, they're just avoiding of talking about those issues as well. Fair and free trade, I mean, they've just started to be irritated because they do not have any policy which is in the context of fair and free. So they are criticizing Chinese Republic policies at the moment. There is an increase in the Chinese industry, and at a level of 8.4%. I mean, so they are able to increase their production level. So there is not a case which is going to be disturbing the other markets in the globe. I mean. There are some capacities which are not in use, and we are just carrying out, making our productions in more modern ways and using more modernized capacities. But some of them are claiming that they would be having difficulties in using the modernized system. So I think this is something that we have to take into consideration. But there's another issue that we have to take into consideration. The highest protectionism measures, both in Europe and America, it is leading to the usage of the capacities which are not in use. Or are using the new capacity. So this is a little bit disturbing. So when we suggest them to talk about, they say that this is something that we shouldn't talk about it now, right now. So when we talk about that, these countervailing measures are not good enough. So I mean, and these attitudes are not appropriate for for those European and the USA. So, in the recent years, the capacity has, and they say that the capacity has been increased a lot. But for God's sake, tell me where the capacity has been increased here in the south. So when we look at the capacity in 2012, from 12 and what capacity increase are they talking about over here? There is no capacity increase, and there are several decline in the capacity, as you can see in this graph. for example, Sivas Iron, Demir Çelik. So they are not in the operation, but we are just showing them as if they also under operation, and there is a possibility of getting into operation back. So, in the real sense, the capacity we cannot talk about the increase in our capacity, but we can talk about the decline and the capacity. So, it's generally believed that the capacity in Turkey is increasing. The argument which are based on the wrong estimations are generally accepted as the general information about the countries in the world. So, more logical comments should have been made by those countries. So, and Eurocom is also acting as a company. We are just encountering this kind of situation. So the walls which are going to be building up against Turkey is generally based on the subjective evaluations. Uh, I'm going to be touching upon a little bit on political issues as well, but in the past, Armenian bill has been given against Turkey. So they are asking to delegate over there. What happened? So we were, they, I mean, he was saying that there is no genocide, and what happened that you have changed your idea and saying that the big disaster happened in Turkey is called genocide. And the answer was because the situation of Turkey is now confronting with the relation with the United States of America. If there is something that we can respect for the things that the U.S. government is doing, then we can respect them. And they're talking about the safeguard measure, you see. If the States and Europe applies and impose the safeguard measures, of course the other countries can do that as well. And so now 72 dumping tax has been taken. It's an industry which is going to be forming a base for the other industries as well. And in the applications of the steel, of course, there are really unbalanced applications, and which will have an impact on the Turkish steel industry as well. So, do you think that we have to be very desperate or so hopeful? Of course, the style that the America is taking and keeping is not the right way. For example, America has no products that investigated as in terms of dumping applications. So we believe that the states would like to have an agreement with the Chinese as well. And if there is an agreement which has already been concluded with the China, of course, we are hoping that this agreement will have a positive impact on the Turkish steel industry as well. So I'm not referring back to that they cancel the imposing of the tax over the steel industry in Turkey at a rate of 25%. So we have had some negotiations and discussion with the authorities of the states as well, and we've got some. But the states that I know in the past is not exactly the same as this one is at the moment. And America is not. So we've got a different America at the moment, and this is not something good and in favor of both America and the other countries and the world as well. So, regarding to flat steel, the import the share of the import in the total consumption, and I mean, in comparison with the average steel, it was around 44%, and the flat steel is around 48%, and so we can have an idea that the flat steel will be below 46%, and total steel trade when we look at it, and I mean into the terms of tons. Uh, so ithalat was 8.6, so, and 13.4 export we have that. So there is a difference around 5%. So I mean, so we can say that this trend may go down below 4 point something because as our export is decreasing, and the last year has a little bit jump in the export of the steel products as well. So this is a net export. It's about 4 tons. And when we look at these, I mean, from the point of dollars, of course, there is a very, there is around $2 million difference. So net export, both in tons and dollar, our net export in 2017 as of has increased to the European countries, and all along 20 years without having any bread, it just went up below the water level. So 175,000 tons to the States, and so, yeah, I mean the balance between export and import is around 130,000. So yesterday, Urbe in the meeting yesterday also touched upon this. There is a dilemma over here, especially in the year of 2018, has just been reinforced in the year of 2018, and we came on the row of 6. So, I mean, we are the number 10, the most important countries in the world. So, in brief, still, Turkish steel industry, as of the 2016, a very serious performance has shown, and the increase in the products, and on the other hand, especially the structure of the products. Of course, there are a great deal of changes and developments as well. Uh, with Erdemir, which was only limited to Erdemir productions, and afterwards, after the getting into the market, Toskaç and Havaş into the market, of course, it just have already been bettered. Uh, So we can say that there is a very large and great capacity of which is going to be satisfying the demands of the domestic market and the global markets as well. So I mean, this situation is just forcing and urging the producers to produce more products. So I mean, this should be taken and carried out in a more balanced way, and especially just keeping in mind that the changes in the world is not going to be happening in the near future, and if so I mean, if the United States attitudes towards the trade, the steel trade is being at a balanced level as well. I mean, we cannot say that this is directly related to the implications of the President Trump. We believe that this policy is just going to be carried out by the United States as well. But I mean, the most important thing that the applications which are going to be carried out should be consistent and for example, I mean, taking around 72 measures and dumping applications are not something acceptable. But I mean, we are going to be witnessing more or less the same or similar things in the steel industry in the upcoming years as well. And the industries which use the steel products should be also in line with the development happening in the industry, steel industry. So I mean the failure of the steel industry will have a great impact on the other industries as well. That's why they have. I mean, the stakeholders should be also be aware of what's going on in the steel industry as well. So common sense and the mutual agreement should be also attained. I believe that this agreement should be attained in the near future. So the developments and progress happening in Turkey is also contributing to this aim, especially the decrease in the interest rates. But in conclusion, we are talking about interest rate of 12%, and in the automobile and white good industry, of course, we have already witnessed the effects of this decrease. And I mean, if this field is not going to be opening up for the steel industry, I mean, there will be a troublesome period will be seen in the Turkish market as well. And I mean, we have to try to reinforce the power of the steel industry together with the stakeholders which we produce products for them to use. You see, an optimistic estimation, we have been we have foreseen around 8% increase to the global steel industry, and they interpret it as being a very extraordinary estimation, you see. But I mean, when the consumption dropped down at a rate of 44, they didn't consider it as to be very extraordinary decline. So it's not only the base effect of the 2019. So there 14.9 base effect has already been achieved. So I mean, but I mean, it's not going to be reaching at the level of the percentage that we have had in the year 2017, and so. This will be very good, especially for the steel industry and the other industries which use the steel products as well. And I would like to extend my special thanks to each one of you for listening to me.
Teşekkür ediyoruz. Doktor Yayan için soru var mı acaba? Benim çok kısa bir sorum olacak. Buyurun. Çok uzatmadan hemen sorayım. Siz tabii hem konumunuz hem kişisel bağlantılarınız dolayısıyla Eurofer'le çok ilişkiler içerisindesiniz, iyi ilişkiler içerisindesiniz, iyi takip ediyorsunuz orayı da. Bu şeyi merak ediyorum, tam anlamadım ben. Karbon emisyonlarıyla ilgili oradan ayrı bir ticari engelleme veya önlem, bir vergi vesaire bir şey hazırlıkları var.
Are they preparing for special measures or anything like that, or special taxes? Recently in Europe, they have seen that they do not have enough leeway financially. So they come up with environmental dumping about the carbon taxes or the carbon trade that we have already been applying. They're applying these in the scope of environmental measures. And they're also saying that there are practices that are against human rights or regulations or child labor, about the situations of the laborers. Let's include that as well, they say. So in a way, they are coming up with all of the excuses that one can. And to this end, I fail to see what benefit that could serve uh, the trade. So they don't say that we can't get a foothold in the steel business. They don't say that. Instead, they are coming up with artificial excuses. But this is, I think, ridiculous. And I witnessed that they're really discussing these prospects seriously. And this is when the consumption has declined by 0.4. So any other questions for Mr. Veysel? Thank you very much.